Welcome back to Spooky Stories, the place where shadows breathe and silence has a voice of its own. Tonight we have 5 terrifying encounters, each more unsettling than the last. Our first story comes from a government quarter on the edge of town, where a family thought they had found a safe home until a presence revealed itself in the mirror. This chilling encounter is known as the woman in the mirror. Next, we join Ethan from Denver, Colorado. His love for motorcycles and open roads carried him into the mountains, where an innocent camping trip twisted into a nightmare of footsteps, whispers, and something that followed him home. This is the biker's nightmare. Then comes the tale of Jake, a long-haul truck driver whose only companion was his loyal German shepherd, Rex. But on a stormy night in the Appalachian woods, he discovered the road ahead was more than dangerous. It was haunted. This is the truck stop horror. From there, we climb aboard an Amtrak train bound for the Midwest, where one family's journey to a wedding turned into a night of scratching, tapping, and pale figures pressing against the windows. This is the train ride. And finally, we ride with Daniel, a freight train engineer whose routine haul through the forest became a fight for survival when the storm forced him to stop and something began clawing at the cars. This is the freight train. 5 voices, 5 stories, 5 nights you will never forget. Your likes truly help me. They show your appreciation and motivate me to keep working harder to bring you even darker, scarier stories. Your subscription is more than just a click. It's your welcome into the Spooky Stories family. So dim the lights, settle into your seat, and get ready, because the journey begins now.
My name is Ethan. I am from Denver, Colorado. I've always been obsessed with road trips, especially the kind you take on a motorcycle. Heavy bikes, long open roads, camping gear strapped to the back. That's where I feel alive. If you've ever done it, you'll understand. In a car, you just watch the scenery, but on a bike, you live it. The wind, the cold, the smells of pine and wet dirt. You're not watching a movie, you're in it. You're the main character. I usually ride with a close group of friends. Most of us have big bikes, nothing under 150 cc's. We'll spend 2, sometimes 3 days out, pushing through long rides, crashing at either campsites or motels if camping isn't allowed. This particular story happened when I wasn't with my usual crew. A few other friends had planned a trip to the mountains, up toward an area near Mount Rainier in Washington. It was one of those early summer runs. The snow's melted off the roads, but the air still bites once the sun goes down. We left before sunrise, and by late afternoon, after nearly 10 hours of riding, we reached a wide meadow near the base of the trail. The place was stunning. Rolling grass, pine trees stretching forever, the sky turning gold as the sun sank behind the peaks. The exhaustion in my body seemed to melt away the moment I saw it. We pitched our tents while there was still light. The meadow felt peaceful, almost too perfect. The kind of place where silence has weight. Not far off, maybe a few hundred yards through the trees, one of my friends pointed out another tent. It looked old, weather-beaten, like it had been sitting there for weeks. At the time, we didn't think much of it. After all, people camp all over the mountains. That evening, a local kid came wandering through the area. We gave him a few bucks, And in return, he brought us firewood and even made us some strong black tea on his little kettle stove. Then he left, saying his family's cabin was downhill, way off the main trail. By the time night fell, the temperature had dropped hard. We lit the fire, cooked some food, laughed, swapped pictures and videos from the ride. And as we sat there, my buddy nudged me and said, "Hey, check that out." He was pointing toward the tree line, where that old tent stood. Now, in the dark, a faint orange glow flickered there, like someone had hung a lantern just outside. It looked eerie, like something out of an old ghost story. We figured it was nothing, just some other camper who'd lit a lamp. But the way that single glow burned through the shadows of the pines, I'd be lying if I said it didn't unnerve me. By midnight, we were dead tired. The fire burned down low, our bodies ached from the long ride, and the cold was cutting into our bones. One by one, we turned in, zipping our tents shut, trying to get some rest. I wish I could say I slept through the night. But a few hours later, I woke to the sound of footsteps. At first, I thought the footsteps were just one of my friends stumbling out to take a leak. But the more I listened, the more wrong it felt. The sound wasn't close, it was circling, slow, deliberate, crunching through grass and dry leaves. The steps moved around our tents, keeping a distance, but never going away. I held my breath, straining my ears. The night was so still that every sound carried clear. An owl hooting somewhere far off, the faint rustle of the trees, and those footsteps. Then it hit me. They weren't heavy enough. We were all big guys, grown men, boots, gear. But this sound? It was lighter, uneven, almost like bare feet dragging across the ground. My heart hammered against my chest. I reached for the flashlight clipped to my backpack, but I didn't dare unzip the tent. If I made noise, whoever or whatever it was would know exactly where I was. Minutes passed. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I told myself I was imagining things, pulled the sleeping bag tighter, and eventually drifted back to a restless sleep. When the morning came, I tried to shake it off. I didn't even tell the others. No point in spooking the group on the first day. We packed up quick, rode further up into the mountains, and by late afternoon found another spot. This one wasn't a meadow. It was deeper in the woods, the kind of place where the trees crowd over you and block out the sky. Again, we noticed it. Another tent. Old, beaten down, sitting crooked near the tree line, like it hadn't been touched in years. This time, though, none of us said anything. We were too tired from the ride, too focused on getting a fire going before the cold set in. That night was worse. It started the same, footsteps in the dark, but now they came closer. I could hear them brushing against my tent wall, circling, pausing just long enough to let me know someone was right there. I wanted to yell, I wanted to rip open the tent, shine the flashlight in their face, but something in me wouldn't let me. Something deep down told me not to look. I didn't sleep a minute. When I stepped outside, the ground was wet with dew. My boots sank slightly into the earth, leaving clear prints. but mixed in with ours were others. Bare feet. Small. Thin. Dozens of them. Circling our tents in the dirt. I didn't say a word. I just pointed to the ground. My friends froze, staring in silence. No one laughed. No one brushed it off. We packed up faster than ever before and hit the road. None of us admitted it out loud, but we all knew something was following us.
By the third night, the mood had changed. The excitement of the trip was gone. None of us were talking about the ride anymore, or the scenery, or the thrill of being out here. We just rode in silence, eyes scanning the woods as if we expected something to step out at any moment. We stopped at another clearing, small, tight, surrounded by tall fir trees that blotted out most of the light. The place felt wrong the second we pulled in, but we were exhausted and had no choice but to set up camp. And then, there it was again. Another tent. Same as before, old, weathered, leaning to one side. It looked like it had been abandoned years ago, but somehow, impossibly, it was always there. None of us even pretended not to notice this time. We kept glancing at it as we unpacked, as if expecting someone to crawl out of it, but nobody did. When night came, we didn't bother with food. We lit a fire, sat in a tight circle, and tried to stay awake. But fatigue always wins. One by one, my friends drifted off until I was the only one still watching the flames. That's when I heard it again. The footsteps. But now, they weren't circling all of us. They were inside the camp. Slow, measured, dragging sounds, weaving between the tents. The firelight flickered and hissed. Shadows stretched long across the trees. I gripped the flashlight so hard my knuckles turned white. And then, my buddy's tent rustled. Not from wind, not from him shifting inside. Something brushed across it, dragging along the fabric. I whispered his name, but he didn't answer. The sound moved, closer to mine. The thin nylon wall of my tent pressed inwards slightly, like a hand had laid flat against it. I held my breath, my heart thundering in my ears. And then I heard it. A voice. Low. Drawn out. A whisper that didn't sound human. I couldn't make out the words, but the intent was clear. It wasn't calling to me. It was calling for me. I froze, paralyzed with terror. I don't remember how long it lasted, seconds, minutes, maybe more, but at some point, the pressure lifted, the footsteps faded, and the forest went silent again. By morning, none of us spoke about what had happened. We didn't need to. We could see it in each other's faces. Pale, sunken, sleepless. We knew. Something was following us. Something that wanted more than just to be seen. By the fourth night, we were broken. None of us had slept more than a couple of hours since the trip began. Our eyes were bloodshot, our nerves fried. Every mile of road felt heavier than the last. But we pushed on, because what else could we do? Turning back didn't feel safer. It felt like running from something that would just keep following. When the sun dipped low again, We found ourselves in another clearing. I swear to you, it was like déjà vu, because there it was, that same old tent, slouched, colorless, rotting away, always waiting for us. This time, though, it wasn't empty. As we unpacked, one of my friends froze, staring toward the tree line. I followed his gaze and saw a shape, a figure, standing just behind the tent. Too far to make out clearly, but close enough to know it was watching us. Still, silent, unmoving. We scrambled, yelling, shining our flashlights, but the beam only caught branches and shadows. The figure was gone. Night fell like a hammer. We tried to build the fire bigger, brighter, as if the light could protect us. But deep down, we all knew it wouldn't. The footsteps came back, louder, heavier, circling faster than before, darting closer, pulling back, as if to toy with us. One of my friends snapped. He jumped up, flashlight in one hand, a knife in the other, shouting into the dark. "Show yourself!" he screamed. And for the first time, it did. The figure stepped forward, just past the reach of the firelight. A woman, or what looked like one. Long, tangled hair, pale skin stretched too tight across her face. She swayed as she stood there, head tilted unnaturally to one side. We froze, every muscle in our bodies locked in place. Then she smiled, a wide, broken smile that split her face like a wound. The fire cracked. The woods erupted with that horrible dragging sound, like 100 footsteps moving at once. Shadows writhed in the trees, closing in. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was all of us at once. But we grabbed what we could, bolted for our bikes, and tore out of there like hell itself was chasing us. I didn't look back. None of us did. And we never camped again.
When we finally made it back to Denver, we thought it was over. We didn't talk about what we saw, what we heard, or what followed us. We just went our separate ways, each of us desperate to pretend none of it had ever happened. For the first couple of nights, I slept like the dead. No tents, no footsteps, no cold mountain air. Just the comfort of my own bed. But then, it started again. The first night, I woke to a faint scratching at my window. My apartment is on the second floor. There's no balcony, no ledge anyone could stand on. Still, the sound was there. Scrape. Drag. Like nails across glass. The second night, I dreamed of her, that woman. She stood at the edge of my bed, her head tilted, that same broken smile stretching too wide. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was watch as she leaned closer and closer, her hair brushing against my face. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. By the third night, I knew it wasn't just dreams. I got up to grab water, passing the hallway mirror, and nearly collapsed. For a split second,
Her reflection stood where mine should have been. Long hair, pale face, those dark, hollow eyes burning into me. And then she was gone. I called my friends the next day, desperate to hear I wasn't losing my mind. One by one, they admitted the same thing. Scratches at the window, whispers in the dark, glimpses of her in the mirror. She hadn't stayed in the mountains. She came back with us. By the 6th night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing closer. Every sound in the apartment felt like her nails scraping along the walls. It wasn't just me anymore. My friends were unraveling too. One of them called at 3 a.m., whispering, "She's been in my room." He swore he'd felt her hands on his chest, pressing him down, pinning him like he was nothing. Another said he'd come home to find muddy, barefoot prints on his kitchen floor, leading straight to his bedroom. She wasn't just a shadow anymore. She was crossing over. That night, I hit my limit. I'd been sitting in the living room with every light on, a baseball bat across my lap, when the temperature in the room dropped so sharply, my breath came out in fog. The TV flickered off. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Inside. Slow. Deliberate. Crossing the hardwood toward me. I gripped the bat so tight my palms hurt. "Leave me alone." The footsteps stopped. Silence. And then, from the hallway mirror, she stepped out. Not a reflection. Her. Hair black as oil, clinging to her face, skin pale and wet-looking, as if she'd crawled up from a lake. Her head tilted to that impossible angle, eyes wide and empty. She smiled that jagged smile and started toward me. I swung the bat, but it cut through nothing. She was still there, moving closer, closer, until she was right in front of me. Cold fingers brushed my cheek. My vision went white. For a second, I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It was like she was pulling something out of me, piece by piece. Then just as suddenly, she vanished. I collapsed to the floor, gasping, shaking, drenched in sweat. That was the night I knew. She didn't just follow us home. She owned us now. And she wasn't going to stop.
My name's Jake, and I've been an over-the-road trucker for the last 15 years. I've hauled freight across every stretch of this country. Deserts, plains, mountains, but nothing ever shook me like what I went through one stormy night deep in the Appalachians. If you've ever driven those roads in West Virginia or Western Pennsylvania, you know the kind I mean. Narrow 2-lane highways cutting through endless dark forest. No street lights, no cell service, just your headlights, the asphalt, and black trees press it in on all sides. That night, I was running a late route with my dog, Rex. He's a big German shepherd, loyal as they come. Always rides shotgun with me in the cab. And usually, he's calmer than I am. But even he felt uneasy that night. The way he kept staring out the window, ears twitching, I knew something wasn't right. The rain had started around dusk, light at first, but by midnight it was a full-on mountain storm. Sheets of water slammed the windshield. My wipers could barely keep up. Thunder cracked so loud it rattled the trailer. Still, I kept on. Loads don't care about weather. Somewhere past a coal town, I can't even remember the name of it, I noticed the road ahead looked wrong. My headlights swept across the blacktop, and there was something stretched across both lanes. At first, I thought it was just a fallen tree from the storm. Happens all the time. But as I slowed, I realized this wasn't a tree. It was bigger, thicker, like something had been dragged out of the woods and dropped across the road. Rex started growling. Low, steady, the kind of growl that comes from deep in a dog's chest. I eased the truck to a stop, hazard lights blinking in the downpour. My gut told me not to open the door, but I had no choice. I couldn't go forward, and back in a full rig on that narrow road wasn't happening. So I grabbed my raincoat, clicked on the flashlight, and stepped out into the storm. The rain was freezing, pelting my face like needles. My boots splashed through mud and gravel as I walked closer to that thing in the road. And then I saw it. Not a tree, not even close. What lay across the highway looked like a carcass. Huge, bloated, twisted in ways no animal should be. The stench hit me a second later. Rotten, metallic, unbearable. I gagged, raising the light higher. That's when I saw movement. Something shifted on top of it. Something climbing. And in that moment, with lightning splitting the sky behind it, I realized I wasn't looking at roadkill at all. I was looking at bait. Lightning lit up the road again, and I finally saw it clear. Something was crouched on top of that carcass. Not an animal I recognized, not even close. It was long-limbed, skin pale and slick like it had never seen the sun. Its head jerked up when the light hit it, and two glowing eyes locked straight onto me. Rex went berserk inside the cab, barking, snarling, scratching at the window like he was ready to tear through the glass. I staggered backward, my boots sliding in the mud. That thing moved, fast, too fast. It scrambled down the side of the carcass on all fours, its joints bending the wrong way. And then, it was gone. Just gone. The woods swallowed it. No sound but the storm, and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. I didn't wait to figure out where it went. I bolted back to the cab, slammed the door, and threw the rig into reverse. The tires screamed against the wet pavement, the whole trailer fishtailing as I backed up that narrow road. That's when Rex stopped barking. He went still, dead still, his ears pinned back, eyes locked on the sleeper cab behind me. Before I could turn, the roof of the truck buckled. Something had landed on top. The whole cab shook as claws scraped against the metal. The sound was nails on chalk awful, ripping long grooves across the roof. Rex was losing his mind, lunging toward the sleeper cab, teeth bared.
I floored it, the engine roaring, the truck screaming down that mountain road in reverse. But no matter how fast I went, the weight stayed. It was riding with us. I finally slammed the brakes, throwing the truck into park. Rain hammered the windshield. I reached for the handgun I kept in the glove box, hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. And then, silence. The weight lifted. The sound stopped. I sat frozen, pistol clenched, staring at the roof. Rex was still snarling, but his eyes had shifted to the side window now. I followed his gaze and nearly dropped the gun, because there, pressed against the glass, was a pale, twisted face. Upside down, it had crawled down the side of the truck, hanging there like a spider, its jaws gaping far too wide, teeth jagged and uneven, and it was smiling at me.
I don't remember pulling the trigger, but the flash lit up the cab, and the gunshot was deafening in that confined space. The thing let out a shriek, a high, distorted wail that didn't sound human, didn't sound animal. It vanished from the window in an instant. I didn't wait. I jammed the truck into drive and floored it, tires spitting water as I tore down that mountain road. My hands were white-knuckled on the wheel, Rex barking like mad at the empty darkness beyond the windshield. But the storm was only getting worse. Rain poured in sheets, blinding, heavy, and the thunder rolled so close it rattled through my chest. And then, the road was gone. The headlights caught a wall of fallen trees, 3, maybe 4 massive trunks blocking both lanes, fresh from the storm. There was no way through. I slammed the brakes, the rig skidding sideways across the slick blacktop until it finally groaned to a halt. For a moment, I just sat there, panting, pistol still in my hand, staring at the blockade. My brain kept telling me to back up, to turn around, but I knew damn well what was behind me. Rex whined, his nose pressed against the door. He kept glancing toward the tree line, ears pinned back. I looked at the clock. Midnight. No chance of another driver coming by. No signal on my phone. No houses for miles. The only option was the woods. I killed the engine, grabbed my flashlight, my gun, and threw on a backpack I kept packed for emergencies. Rex leapt down beside me, paws splashing into the mud. The forest was worse than the road. Every tree looked the same, towering black shapes dripping with rain. The beam of my flashlight cut only a narrow tunnel through the dark, and every time the thunder hit, it felt like the whole mountain groaned. We hiked fast, mud sucking at my boots, branches whipping across my jacket. The rain was cold, relentless, soaking me through. Rex stayed close, his body low, every muscle tense. His ears twitched constantly, following sounds I couldn't hear. And then, he froze. A low growl rumbled from his chest, his teeth bared at the darkness ahead. I swung the flashlight, and there it was, not 20 feet away, crouched between the trees, pale skin glistening in the rain,
long limbs coiled, ready to spring. Its head cocked sideways, like it was studying me. For a second, the storm seemed to vanish. I couldn't hear the rain, the thunder, nothing but my own heartbeat. And then, it moved, straight at us. I fired as it lunged. The muzzle flash lit up the forest like lightning, and for a split second I saw it in full. Limbs twisted, mouth gaping, eyes glowing white. The shot didn't slow it. Rex leapt at the thing, teeth snapping. His weight slammed into it mid-charge, knocking it sideways into the mud. The thing shrieked, an awful, ear-splitting sound, and clawed at him. I fired again, and it rolled into the underbrush, vanishing into the black. "Come on, boy," I shouted, yanking Rex by the collar. We ran. Branches tore up my arms, mud sucked at my boots. The storm chased us like a living thing. I don't know how long we pushed through that forest, but eventually through the sheets of rain, I saw it. A cabin. Old, sagging, half swallowed by vines. The roof leaned, the windows were shattered, and the door hung crooked on one hinge. But in that moment, it looked like salvation. I kicked the door in, flashlight beams sweeping across the interior. Dust, broken furniture, cobwebs, the smell of rot, but at least it had walls. Rex darted inside with me. I shoved the door shut, wedging a broken chair under the handle. The place groaned with every gust of wind, rain hammering the roof like a drum. I set the flashlight on a shelf, its weak glow spilling across the room. My heart was still hammering, my hands trembling so bad I could barely reload the pistol. Rex paced by the door, hackles raised, growling low. He wasn't calming down, not even inside. That's when I noticed the scratches. The walls, the doorframe, the floorboards, deep gouges, long and uneven, carved into the wood. Not from tools, not from animals, from claws. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't shelter. This was a trap. I heard it then. Something moving outside the cabin, circling the cabin. Heavy steps splashing in the mud. Slow, deliberate, pausing, waiting. Rex barked, launching at the window, teeth bared. And then, something pressed against the glass. A pale hand, long fingers splayed, nails scraping down the pane with a sound that made my skin crawl. I raised the gun, but my gut told me one thing. We weren't alone in that cabin, not by a long shot.
The storm raged on, battering the roof like it wanted to tear the cabin apart. Rain poured through cracks, dripping onto the warped floorboards. My flashlight flickered weakly, shadows stretching long and jagged across the room. Rex wouldn't stop pacing. He growled at the windows, then the door, then the back wall. like the danger was everywhere at once. His ears twitched, tracking sounds I couldn't hear. And then I realized he wasn't wrong. The creaks weren't just from the storm. They were coming from inside. I swung the light across the room, the beam trembling in my hand. For a second, all I saw was broken furniture, splintered wood. But then, the beam caught movement. In the far corner, half hidden behind the remains of a toppled wardrobe, something shifted. At first, I thought it was a pile of rags, but then it unfolded. Long, thin limbs stretching out from the shadows, pale skin glistening wet, a head turning slowly toward me. Its eyes caught the light, two perfect white circles glowing in the dark. Rex barked so violently it nearly deafened me. The thing hissed, like steam escaping a pipe, and began to crawl. Not walk, crawl. Its limbs bent wrong, elbows jutting high as it scuttled across the floor like an insect. I'd fired. The blast lit up the cabin, and the thing shrieked, twisting away. But before I could get a second shot off, I heard it. Another sound. Above us. Claws scraping against the roof. One outside, one inside. We were surrounded. Rex lunged at the crawling thing, teeth snapping, as I backed toward the corner with my pistol raised. The cabin shook with every movement outside, the walls groaning, the ceiling raining dust. The creature inside darted fast, too fast for something so twisted, slamming into the wall, scrambling across the boards. My shot had grazed it, but it wasn't slowing down. I realized then this cabin wasn't abandoned. It was theirs, and I had just walked straight into their nest. The inside the cabin lunged, its claws raked across the floorboards as Rex slammed into it again. His teeth sank into its arm, if you could even call it an arm, and the creature let out a scream so high-pitched it made my ears ring. I fired. The blast exploded in the confined space. The blast threw dust and splinters from the wall, and the pale body jerked back into the shadows. Before I could track it, the roof sagged. Something heavy landed on the rafters, shaking the entire cabin. The boards above groaned and cracked under the weight. There were two, maybe more. Rex snarled, blood on his muzzle. He stood firm between me and the shadows. His growls rolled through the cabin, deep and constant. I'd never seen him like that. He knew exactly what we were up against. The scratching started again, not just from the roof, from the walls, from underneath the floor. A chorus of claws, raking wood. They were everywhere. The flashlight flickered once, then steadied. Its beam swept the room and caught those eyes again. Two perfect circles glowing from the far side of the cabin. Then another pair, and another. I wasn't facing one. I wasn't facing two. There were at least three inside with us. I emptied the rest of my magazine. Gunshots deafening in the enclosed space. Every flash revealed them closer. Long limbs, gaping mouths, pale skin slick with rain. They didn't move like people. They jittered, lunged, crawled sideways. Too fast, too wrong. The last round clicked empty. The cabin went silent. Only the storm outside, the drip of rain inside, Rex's low, steady growl. I dropped the magazine, fumbling for another. My hands were slick with sweat and rainwater. That's when I saw movement overhead, the roof beam splitting, a pale hand punching through rotten wood, nails curling in. They were coming in. I don't know how long that night lasted. Minutes felt like hours. I fired when I could, swung a broken chair leg when I couldn't. Rex tore into them again and again, snarling like a demon, buying me seconds at a time. But no matter how many times I fought them back, more came. Their faces pressed against the windows, upside down, sideways, grinning. Their claws scraped the door, the walls, the floorboards. And through it all, not one of them spoke. Not one made a sound but that shrieking hiss. They didn't want to scare me. They wanted to wear me down, to wait until I broke. And in that cabin, with the storm drowning the world outside, I realized something terrible. I wasn't meant to survive the night. I must have blacked out at some point. Maybe from exhaustion, maybe from sheer terror. All I know is when I opened my eyes, the cabin was filled with gray light, morning. For a moment, I thought I was dead. The storm was gone. The only sound, the slow drip of rainwater through the broken roof. My ears still rang from the gunshots, my throat raw from breathing too hard. Rex was there, lying against my leg, his chest rising and falling. He opened one eye when I stirred, tail thumping weakly against the floor. Still alive, still guarding me. I pushed myself up, every muscle screaming. The pistol lay in my lap, empty. My flashlight had died sometime in the night, and then I saw the cabin. The scratches were everywhere. Walls, floor, ceiling, dozens, maybe hundreds more than I had noticed before. Long gouges crossing over one another, layered deep into the wood. But the creatures were gone. No bodies, no blood, just emptiness, as if they'd never been there at all. The only proof was Rex, his muzzle stained with something dark, not his own blood, and the memory burned into my brain. I pushed the door open. The forest outside was quiet, dripping, eerily calm. Sunlight filtered weakly through the trees. The road couldn't have been a mile away, but the hike back felt endless. Every snapped branch made my skin crawl. Every shadow between the trees looked like pale limbs waiting to lunge. When I finally stumbled back onto the highway, my truck was still there. Windows fogged, the trailer leaning in the mud, but untouched. No sign of the thing that had landed on it, no sign of the blockade that had forced me into the woods. Just wet asphalt stretching empty in both directions, like nothing had happened. I got Rex into the cab, climbed behind the wheel, and drove until I hit the next town. Didn't stop for gas, didn't stop for food, didn't stop for anything. I never reported it. Who would believe me? A trucker, strung out after a storm, spinning ghost stories? No one would. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what hunted me in those Appalachian woods. And sometimes when I'm hauling through some back road With only Rex by my side, I'll catch him staring into the trees again. His ears perked, his body tense, like he's waiting. And I know they're still out there, waiting for the next storm.
This happened back in 2014, when I was 22 years old. We'd been living in Houston most of our lives, but our extended family was still in the Midwest, Indiana to be exact. Anytime there was a wedding, a funeral, or any kind of family event, we had to make the long trip out there. That year, one of my cousins was getting married. He was the son of my mom's sister, my aunt, who was closer to my mother than anyone else in the world. Not a day went by without the two of them talking on the phone. So of course, when the invitation came, there was no question we were all going. My parents, my younger sister, and I boarded a long-haul Amtrak train. It left Houston around noon and was headed north. Our stop was in a small Indiana town where relatives would pick us up. We'd made the trip before, and it was always long. But this time was different. The ride started out fun. We had an entire section to ourselves, 2 long seats facing each other, plus the bunks above. My mom had packed homemade food, and we were eating, laughing, enjoying the sway of the train. Across from us, on a pair of single seats, 2 strangers sat quietly. They kept to themselves, polite and reserved. Outside, the weather grew heavy and gray. It was summer, but the Midwest was known for its sudden thunderstorms, and family had already told us it had been raining non-stop for days. The train pushed forward, station by station, cutting across miles of flat, empty land. Hours passed, and something strange caught my attention. Normally, the conductor or ticket checker made rounds pretty quickly, but this time, nearly 7 or 8 hours had gone by before anyone came through. Finally, a conductor appeared, checked our family's voucher, then paused by my younger sister, who was sitting near the window. He looked at her, then at the window, then back at us. His expression was serious, too serious for something as simple as a ticket check. He leaned closer and said in a low voice, whispering, tense, "Move the little girl away from the window and listen carefully. If this train stops out in the middle of nowhere tonight, you close that window immediately. Don't leave it open." It wasn't the kind of casual warning people throw around. He repeated it 2, 3 times, pressing it into our minds like it was life or death. He didn't want us brushing it off. Then he moved on, warning other families the same way. We assumed he meant thieves, maybe drifters, trying to grab something through the open windows if the train stalled in the dark. That explanation made sense. Still, the way he said it, with a police officer trailing right behind him, gave me chills. Quiet. Calm. By midnight, the train car was silent. The laughter, the chatter, the noise of kids running around, it had all faded. Around 80% of the passengers were asleep, including my entire family. Resulted, trying to stay alert. I tried to stay awake. I was always the responsible one, the watcher.
A local train like this could draw in pickpockets, or worse. I told myself I'd guard our luggage, but eventually the rhythmic rocking of the train lulled me under. Sudden jolt. At some point, I jolted awake. The train wasn't moving. We were stopped. I looked out and realized we weren't at a station. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere. No platforms, no lights, no signs of civilization. Just a black, empty field stretching under the night sky. Memory returns. Tense. The conductor's words came flooding back. I shut our cabin window immediately. My heart raced as I silently got up. I needed the bathroom, but dread weighed down every step as I slipped through the narrow passage, lined with compartments and half-drawn curtains. Pause. Realization. That's when I saw it. Low, whispering. In one compartment, a family was asleep, their window left open. The mother lay stretched out on the long seat, her head tilted toward the window. And there, leaning in from the darkness outside, was something. Breathless, a black figure. It was pressed against the train wall, impossibly high off the ground, with one long, dark arm reaching inside. Its hand was tangled in the woman's hair. Stunned. For a split second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Then the thing snapped its head toward me, and in less than a heartbeat, it was gone. Vanished below the window. Swallowed by the night. Frozen, skin crawling. I froze. My skin crawled. There was no platform, no ledge, nothing anyone could possibly stand on to reach that high. The train was too tall. It couldn't be human. It couldn't be. Shaking, whispering. Shaking, I hurried on. Pretending I hadn't seen it. Pretending I was imagining things. But I knew I wasn't. Silence. On my way back from the bathroom, curiosity clawed at me. Against every instinct screaming to look away, I slowed down, crouched low, and peeked again into that family's compartment. And there it was. The black figure had returned. It was humanoid in shape, but its face was nothing but a void. Eyes like deep pits, a mouth lost in shadow. Its long, black hair shifted as if underwater, and its hand was still buried in the woman's hair. She lay motionless as though drugged or trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake from. I wanted to scream, to wake everyone, to drag her away. But terror locked me in place. If I made a sound, would it notice me? Would it crawl inside? The moment I bolted back to my family's cabin, I felt its attention shift. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I shook my parents awake, my voice trembling as I explained what I had seen. My father wasted no time. He marched to that family's compartment and knocked until the husband stirred. "Close your window," my dad ordered. My son saw something outside. The man roused his wife, shaking her, but she wouldn't wake. Her body breathed, her heart still beat, but she was frozen. Her face was covered with a scarf. When the scarf was pulled back, her eyes were wide open, staring blankly, her body rigid as stone. It took prayers, whispered words, and finally a sharp cry before she came out of it, screaming, sobbing, shaking. She said something had been sitting on her chest, crushing her. She could hear everything, but she couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't fight. The entire train car was awake now, windows snapping shut, people whispering in fear. Then came the whispers outside. Faint voices, footsteps crunching on gravel, circling the train. Breathing, pressed close against the metal walls. Something was out there. And in that panic, one more horror struck us. One of the men, one of the strangers who had been sitting near our section, was missing. His blanket, his bag, his belongings were still there, but he was gone. The train sat dead on the tracks, the storm outside swallowing the world in darkness. Passengers whispered nervously, curtains pulled tight, windows sealed. Everyone had seen enough to know something was wrong. And then came the realization. One of the men, one of the strangers who had been sitting near our section, was missing. At first, people thought he'd gone to another car, maybe the dining coach or the bathroom. But his jacket was still draped over the seat. His travel bag sat untouched. His shoes were even under the seat. Only he was gone. My father's face hardened. He called for the conductor. A police officer boarded our car not long after. Yes, an officer assigned to ride the train through remote stretches. He questioned passengers quietly, then told us to stay put while he searched. When he passed our family, my father stopped him. He told him exactly what I had seen: the black figure, the arm inside the window, the woman who had been paralyzed. The officer didn't laugh, he didn't dismiss it. He just nodded grimly and told us to keep the windows locked no matter what we heard outside. By then, the whole car was awake, even children were crying. The missing man's seatmate, an old woman, kept muttering that she had seen him stand up, wander toward the bathroom, and never return. The officer walked down the narrow aisle, peering into each compartment, shining a flashlight under the bunks. Nothing. The man was gone. Finally, he stepped off the train into the night. Through the glass, I watched his flashlight beam bob through the tall grass beside the tracks. And that's when I saw them. Shapes. Low, crouched, moving unnaturally through the weeds. Pale, long-limbed things slipping between the trees, just beyond the reach of his light. The officer paused, his beam catching a hint of movement. Two glowing eyes staring back at him from the darkness. Then the shape vanished. He raised his weapon, scanning the field, but the night swallowed everything. Slowly, cautiously, he climbed back onto the train. His expression told us everything. He hadn't found the missing man, but he had found something. The train crew huddled at the far end of the car, voices low and tense. I couldn't hear every word, but one thing carried back. Second time this month. Passengers demanded answers, but none came. The officer told us only one thing before retreating to his post. Stay inside. Do not open the windows. Do not step off this train. And with that, the lights in our car flickered. The power sagged. The storm outside grew heavier, rain slashing against the glass. That was when the scratching began. Long, deliberate claws dragging across the metal of the train car. Back and forth. Back and forth. Not rushing, not frantic. Just waiting. The sound started faint, almost like branches brushing the side of the car. But there were no trees near the tracks, nothing but open field. The scratching grew louder, long, deliberate drags of claw against metal, moving from one end of the car to the other. Every few seconds it paused, then started again, closer. People held their breath. Mothers pulled their children tight. Men pressed themselves against the aisles, watching the windows as if at any moment something would break through. I gripped the edge of my seat, my eyes locked on the glass. My sister whispered that she could hear footsteps in the gravel outside, pacing, circling. And she was right. I could hear it too. Slow, heavy steps crunching along the tracks, stopping beneath the very window we sat beside. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. Something tapped against the glass. Not random, not the rain. 3 distinct knocks, slow and deliberate. My mother muffled a cry. My father clenched his fists, ready to strike at whatever came through. I forced myself to look, and that's when I saw them. Handprints. Black, skeletal hands pressing flat against the glass, dragging downward, leaving smears that looked almost oily. Fingers too long, bending at wrong angles, like they had extra joints. And behind the hands, eyes. 2 white, lidless eyes glowing faintly in the dark, unblinking, staring straight in at me. I jerked back, hitting the wall. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might stop. The thing outside didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared through the glass like it was studying me. All along the train, other passengers were screaming, shouting prayers, some trying desperately to close curtains that wouldn't stay shut. More hands appeared on more windows, tapping, dragging, smearing. The scratching became a chorus. One brave man lunged forward, yanking the curtain open wide to prove it was nothing. But the moment he did, his scream filled the car. He dropped to the floor, eyes wide in terror, his whole body shaking. Whatever he saw broke him. The officer reappeared, pistol drawn, barking at everyone to stay calm, to keep their curtains closed. His face was pale, sweat shining on his forehead. He had seen them too. And then, as suddenly as it began, the scratching stopped. The hands withdrew. The footsteps faded back into the storm. Silence fell. The train remained stalled, but the night outside felt heavier than before, like those things hadn't left at all. Just stepped back into the dark, waiting. The scratching had stopped, but no one in the car could relax. Every creak of the train, every slam of thunder outside made us flinch. People whispered prayers under their breath. Children whimpered into their mother's arms. That's when we noticed it. Someone new was in the aisle. He stood halfway down the car, facing away from us. His clothes were soaked, as if he'd been walking through the storm. Water dripping steadily onto the floor. He wasn't one of us. Everyone on this car had been accounted for since Houston, but there he was, motionless, silent. The officer noticed him too. "Sir," he called out, stepping forward. "You need to return to your seat." The figure didn't move. Passengers shifted uneasily, whispering to one another. My father leaned close and muttered, "That's not the man who went missing. Look at his clothes." And he was right. The missing passenger had been wearing a gray hoodie. This man's suit was black, torn in places, caked with mud as though he'd clawed his way out of the earth. The officer drew closer, weapon raised. I said, "Return to your seat." Slowly, the figure turned. His face, God, his face was pale, stretched tight like wax. His eyes were wide and empty, nothing but white. And when he smiled, the skin cracked at the corners of his mouth as if it hadn't been used in years. A woman screamed. Someone shouted for the officer to shoot. But before the officer could react, the figure tilted his head back and let out a sound that wasn't human. A shrill, keening wail that made the lights flicker and every window rattle in its frame. The sound carried through the car like it was in our heads. My sister clutched her ears, sobbing. Rex, the family dog, snapped and barked furiously, lunging against his leash like he wanted to tear the thing apart. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the figure staggered backward. It twisted, limbs jerking unnaturally before collapsing into the aisle. By the time the officer reached it, there was nothing left but wet clothes and the puddle they left behind. No body. The officer cursed under his breath, holstered his gun, ordered everyone to stay seated. But the truth was written on his face. He had no control. None of us did. Because whatever that thing was, it hadn't boarded the train. It had been let inside.
The officer tried to calm everyone, but it was useless. The passengers had seen too much. Some sobbed openly. Others gripped rosaries or muttered prayers. A few simply sat frozen in silence, their eyes glazed with shock. The train remained stalled, powerless against the storm. Time crawled. Every minute stretched like an hour. The air inside the car grew hot, heavy with fear and the stench of damp clothes. And then it started again. A thud against the roof, another on the far end of the car, the sound of weight shifting above us, pacing back and forth. Children whimpered. Adults looked up, eyes wide. Whatever was outside hadn't left. It was climbing the train. The officer ordered everyone to stay calm, but his voice shook. He radioed the engineer, demanding to know when we'd move. Static answered him. The scratching returned, this time from the ceiling. Nails dragging along the metal, circling above us. Then, bang! Something slammed so hard against the roof it made the lights flicker. My mother whispered that she could hear laughter. Not loud, not clear, but a thin, cruel giggle riding the wind. My father shook his head, swearing it was just the storm. But the look in his eyes betrayed him. He'd heard it too. Suddenly, from the next car over, a woman screamed. A raw,
piercing scream that cut through the silence. Then another voice joined, her husband's, shouting, cursing, struggling. The officer rushed toward the connecting door, pistol raised. He yanked it open, but before he could cross, something slammed it shut from the other side. The screen cut off. All that remained was silence. He pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Finally, he turned back, face pale as chalk. "Nobody moves," he said. "Stay here. Do not open this door." The rest of the night bled together into a blur of terror. The scratching never stopped. Sometimes claws raked along the windows. Sometimes footsteps echoed on the roof. Sometimes the sound of breathing pressed close against the glass. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse through the thin curtain, a pale face pressed sideways against the window, grinning wide enough to split its skin. And when I blinked, it was gone. The missing passenger never came back. The drenched figure never reappeared, and the train never moved. We were trapped, suspended in darkness, listening to things we could not understand, waiting for the dawn, like prisoners waiting for an execution. That night was the longest of my life. At some point, exhaustion must have dragged me under. I don't remember falling asleep, just the sound of scratching, the storm outside, and the creak of the train walls. When I opened my eyes again, the car was bathed in gray light. Dawn. For a moment, I thought maybe it had all been a nightmare. The storm was gone. The fields outside were wet but quiet, the world eerily still. Passengers stirred in their seats, blinking awake like survivors after a battle. The officer was slumped in the aisle, gun still in his hand, eyes bloodshot from staying awake all night. He didn't say a word. None of us did. We were afraid that if we spoke it, if we admitted it, the night would return. Finally, with a lurch, the train shuddered. The engine roared to life. Slowly, painfully, we began to move. The grinding of the wheels on the track sounded like salvation itself. People cheered weakly. Some wept. Others just sat in stunned silence. Curtains were pulled open, light pouring in, washing away the shadows. But not everything was gone. As the train rolled forward, I looked back through the window. The field we had been stranded in stretched for miles, soaked and glistening in the morning sun. And there, standing in the tall grass, were figures. Dozens of them. Tall, pale, motionless shapes, watching the train roll away. Their faces were blank, their arms dangling unnaturally long. And though they didn't move, I swear their heads turned as one to follow us. Rex growled low in his throat. My father pulled me back, muttering that I shouldn't look. But I couldn't stop. Because among those figures, half hidden in the weeds, was something else. The missing passenger's gray hoodie. He stood with them, not moving, not blinking, just watching. The train gained speed, pulling us farther and farther away.
until the figures vanished into the morning mist. No one spoke for the rest of the ride. No one mentioned what we had seen. By the time we reached Indiana, families gathered their bags, forced smiles, and hurried off into the safety of daylight as though nothing had happened. But I know the truth. Those things are still out there, waiting for the next storm, the next stalled train, the next set of passengers foolish enough to open a window. And sometimes late at night, when I pass by railroad tracks back home in Texas, I swear I hear it again. Scratch, scratch, scratch.
My name's Daniel, and I've been a freight train engineer for over 20 years. I work routes across the Midwest, mostly hauling goods between states. In July of 2014, I was assigned to one of the longer hauls, a heavy freight run that only passes once a month through one of the deepest, most remote stretches of forest in the region. The kind of place where the tracks cut through endless trees, with only the occasional small town far in between. When I got the call from dispatch on July 19th, I wasn't surprised. This route came around on my roster once every few months. I'd done it before, but it was never an easy trip. It takes over 10 days to complete. And once you're deep inside the forest, there's no signal, no help, and no turning back. That night, I took over the locomotive from another crew. We refueled, signed off on the paperwork. My junior engineer climbed aboard with me. In the very last car, the guard's caboose was the freight conductor. We'll call him Archer. For privacy's sake, I'll also call my junior Amir. Both of them play a big part in what happened. I started the locomotive, and the three of us set out into the night. The train was long, 16 cars in total. From the engine to the caboose, it would take at least 15 minutes to walk end to end. And with that much weight dragging behind us, our speed was never more than a slow crawl. That night, a thick fog had settled in. Outside the forest edge, you could see a faint glow of moonlight, but inside the tree line, it was pure darkness. The branches hung so close to the tracks, they sometimes scraped the cars as we passed. I'd run this route enough times to know it was dangerous to stop. There had been stories about thieves hiding in the woods, waiting for the freight to stall. If the train halted in the forest, there was always a chance someone would climb aboard. So my job was simple. Don't stop. Keep the train moving until we were out the other side. But the weather had other plans. By midnight, a cold rain started to fall. It wasn't long before it turned into a storm. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning lit the trees in sharp white flashes, and the downpour was so heavy I had to slow the train even more. Through the radio phone, Archer's voice came in shaky. "Everything's fine, sir, but this speed makes me nervous. Feels like anyone could jump aboard out here." I chuckled, trying to calm him. "Don't worry. As soon as the rain eases, I'll push us faster. Just hang tight." But then, through the glare of the storm, I saw it. A tree, fallen straight across the tracks. I had no choice. I hit the brakes. The entire train shuddered and screamed against the rails until we came to a grinding stop in the middle of that endless forest. The moment we stopped, Archer's voice cut in through the radio. "Sir, why'd you stop? What's happening?" I told him about the tree blocking the tracks, warned him to keep his weapon ready just in case, and called it in to dispatch. Help wouldn't reach us for at least 10 to 12 hours. Too far, too remote. Our only option was to wait out the storm and clear the track ourselves once the rain slowed. So we made coffee and sat in the cab, trying to ignore the suffocating quiet of the woods. The engine's headlights cut into the dark, but beyond that, everything was swallowed in black. That's when I heard it. A metallic clang, then another. The distinct sound of iron striking iron. It came from somewhere in the middle of the train, like someone was hammering at one of the freight car locks. Archer's voice came through, panicked. "Sir, you hear that? Somebody's trying to break a lock. Should I check it out?" I hesitated, then told him, "Yes. Take your flashlight and your radio. Stay sharp." I leaned out the engine window and saw his tiny beam of light flicker as he stepped off the caboose. In the storm, his flashlight looked no brighter than a cigarette ember swaying in the dark. He kept talking over the radio as he walked. "Almost there. It's far, sir. The sound's getting closer, though. God, it feels like something is around me. I keep hearing footsteps behind me, but when I turn, there's nothing." "Don't lose your nerve," I told him. "Stay calm. Check the lock and report back." But his voice was trembling now. "Sir, I swear someone's right next to me, following me." And then we called his name over and over, but all we got back was the storm and the crackle of static. Then suddenly, his radio clicked. No voice, just the heavy hiss of someone holding the button. Amir and I leaned close, straining to hear, and then it came. A voice that was not Archer's. Deep, harsh, almost inhuman. "You made a mistake coming into our territory. We're taking him. If you value your lives, leave this place." I felt the blood drain from my face. That was not a prank. Not Archer. Someone or something else was on that line. We shouted into the radio, but no answer came. Just more static. Finally, Amir and I made the decision. We had to go after him. We left the engine running, grabbed our flashlights, and started the long walk down the train. Rain hammered the cars, mud sucked at our boots, and the forest pressed in, silent and watchful around us. By the time we reached the caboose, it was empty. Archer was gone.
We kept calling out, both by voice and by radio. Nothing. Then, faintly, from deep in the trees, we heard it, our own voices echoing back. The radio was still active. We followed the sound. Sometimes it felt closer, sometimes farther, like something was playing with us. Finally, we found him. Archer was crouched in the mud, knees pulled to his chest, his radio beside him. His face was pale, his body shaking. We shouted his name. Slowly, he lifted his head, and his eyes,
glowed red in the beam of our flashlights. His voice was not his own. "Leave this place. This is our clan's ground. He stays with us." Then, layered under it, I heard his real voice break through, desperate and terrified. "Sir, help me, please. I don't know how I got here. They're all around me. Tall men, huge. Don't you see them?" We looked. There was nothing. Just empty forest. But Archer's eyes darted wildly, as if surrounded. "They're here! Right here! They'll kill me!" Amir muttered a prayer under his breath, clutching his flashlight tight. I could see in his face he believed Archer. I forced my voice steady. "Whoever you are, whatever you are, we're sorry. We didn't mean to trespass. We'll leave as soon as the tracks are clear. Just let him go." Archer's body jerked, like something was wrestling inside him. Then, finally, he staggered to his feet, still trembling, still darting his eyes to things only he could see, but he was moving toward us. And then, far off through the trees, we heard the whistle of our train. We rushed back. Somehow, impossibly, the fallen tree had been cleared from the tracks. The engine lights burned, waiting. But no one was there. Had something or someone moved it for us? We didn't stop to wonder. We pulled Archer aboard, climbed back into the cab, and got that train rolling as fast as it would carry us. Archer never spoke another word that night. He sat shaking, sweating, and by morning he was running a fever. He rode the rest of the way in the locomotive with us, too afraid to return to the caboose. I don't know what we saw in that forest. I don't know who or what claimed it as their territory. All I know is this: when the storm breaks and you hear the sound of metal on metal in the middle of a dark forest, don't go looking, because not everything out there is meant to be seen.
And that brings tonight's dark journey to its end. A special thank you to our storytellers, to the family who endured the haunting of the woman in the mirror, to Ethan from Denver, to Jake and his faithful dog Rex, to the passengers who survived the train ride, and to Daniel, the freight engineer who braved the forest. Your courage in sharing these tales keeps the shadows alive for us all. If you have your own story, true or terrifying, send it in. Your voice could be the next one we share here. And remember, like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell icon. Your likes truly help me. They show your appreciation and motivate me to keep working harder to bring you even darker, scarier stories. Your subscription is more than just a click. It's your welcome into the Spooky Stories family. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are true.